hold off for a second while we wait for every single platform to pick up and start seeing what's going on. And yeah, this is returning to the Monday morning tech chat a little earlier than what I normally stream, but I still have family in town. Last weekend we had Easter and April Fool's Day landing on the same day. We're going to talk a little bit about April Fool's Day wins and April Fool's Day fails. It was kind of a weak year for April Fool's Day jokes, IMO. And a couple other little tech stories. I want to start off with some housekeeping just right off the bat. James Vincent, Dave Edwards, see you joining the Periscope. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We had a really fun Geek Book Club last week where we had Enabong and Lou from On Board and Board at Work, Warren Bowman, BW1. We got to talk about Ready Player One. We focused on talking about Ready Player One, the book. And now, over the weekend, caught Ready Player One, the film. We're going to be doing a follow-up podcast for that. I hope you guys check it out. It should be a lot of fun. Just kind of comparing. Like, I think it's really cool, or I think it's really interesting to compare book versus film in terms of media adaptations. James Vincent, hope you're feeling better from Periscope. I definitely see a couple people from Social Jet Lag and Suam Duda from YouTube. Thanks for tuning in too, guys. I am feeling a little bit better. Actually, that's another piece of housekeeping too. The last couple of weeks I've been dealing with some pretty severe skin issues. I have psoriasis. Starting to get psoriatic arthritis in my left hand here, especially my ring finger. Doing a couple things to try and keep flare-ups at bay. But if you look past broadcasts, my neck was super red, and you can still kind of see the scarring from my last flare up there. It was one of the worst ones I've ever had. And it's kind of tricky, when you want to put yourself on camera, but your face looks like a topographical map of Mordor. So I'm finally feeling like myself again. I'm finally getting over that crazy bad head cold. And last week was a really challenging week because I think I podcasted or broadcast every day last week. So I think it was Monday to the tune of 6 hours of talking between various shows and streams and podcasts. From Lessa GC, wait, so why is everything prefaced with creepy, though? Well, because there's a bunch of creepy things going on. Facebook's being creepy, Sinclair Media's being creepy, and we're going to talk about those news stories here in just a bit less. Don't worry about that. I see Lenato, I see Pierre, I see Anthony Jackson, Alex Tuckney, Dave rejoined. Suresh RL, Juan, reasons why manufacturers moved away from metal and dual front speakers like the HTC M8. So Suresh, my opinion is because they could. Why invest in the money and the time and the effort and the design to put together a metal phone if you don't need to? Why worry about good audio and putting together, a really multimedia driven package when you don't need to? I mean, like, Apple shows us that people will spend premium top dollar on phones which cover everything well, but don't necessarily excel in any one specific area. Like, so just make a good all-rounder. That's way easier than trying to make a concerted, high-end, top-of-the-line, feature-focused device. Chat from Periscope, I bought your book recently. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for supporting production, and I hope the book was able to help you, take your photography game up a bit. My book, of course, is on Kindle. Take better photos, smartphone photography for noobs. I am only sipping through my first cup of coffee in the morning. From Sherrill, I have to say you are less red this time around. What are you doing to medicate your psoriasis? So I always want to be careful when I say what I'm doing, because psoriasis is an autoimmune condition where you should talk to a doctor. I really hate that we rush out to the internet and you try a whole bunch of crazy things. And I was going crazy. I was worried I was going to lose my job at Newegg. It was getting so bad, especially my face. Like, I woke up one morning and I couldn't move my face. My skin was so dry and was so tight. It's kind of hard to host a show with someone as fun as Trisha Hirschberger when I can't smile. So I do a couple vitamin D treatments, calcipotriene, cream, and a a more liquid style scalp treatment. And then I also am currently on Otezla, but I'm thinking of switching off of it. Otezla is super mild, but it still slows me down a lot and kind of messes up my stomach. So that's no fun. From Renato Laporte, Sinclair is creepy. That the update on John Oliver's show, that was really creepy. So I wanna get into a few stories here right quick. Here, let me get this out of the way here. So this one's just fun. My sister sent this to me. I'm going to file this under the rest of the housekeeping for the week just because I'm a big old fanboy. But this TARDIS teaser. So we were doing a whole bunch of series and segments over on Newegg. We did a whole state of VR and VR tech and doing some really cool work there. And this just looks like so much fun. Being able to take a tour around the TARDIS in VR, and something that you could totally expand on. Like, the TARDIS is sort of infinitely large. It's kind of a joke in the show that it's got tons of different rooms and crevices and places and parts. And if someone could do something like that in VR and keep adding to it, that could be a really exciting, a really fun tech demo. I remember when Oculus was doing dev kits, when people were getting their hands on Oculus dev kits, how much fun it was to, I'm going to tour the bridge of Starship Voyager. I don't know why they started with Voyager of all of the starships out there, but sure, let's do that one. So, those kinds of tech demos always look really cool, and I'll be really excited to see. I'm going to spend some time with a Windows mixed reality headset just to kind of get a better grip on what the current state of VR is myself. We were doing that segment, and our producers put it together really, really well. But I'm just still catching up on a lot of gaming tech, and so things like that will be a nice little shot in the arm. This is from Les's GC. I know you're also a camera snob. What's the latest camera you've really dug into the meat and bones of and actually enjoyed? Well, I'm still kind of getting my bearings on Micro Four Thirds. I don't love it for photography, but I really like it for video. It's become a great video platform. And it's actually currently what I'm using to stream this is a Panasonic G85. For phone cameras, I'm still very much impressed by Huawei. I still trot out the Mate 10. I will be finishing up a camera video. It's not on my desk right now. Boo. I will be finishing up a video on the View 10. And that kind of brings me to one last little housekeeping point before we get to all the creepy stories. How come you're not with Pocket Now doing the podcast, Rom H? I still host the Pocket Now podcast. That's on Thursdays. Today is Monday. So this is my podcast because it's Monday. Camera stuff that I've been getting into recently, I will be finishing up the View 10, and I will be doing a camera review for that. I'm not particularly interested in trying to back-to-back smartphones anymore. I'm going to be spending some time wrapping up a review on the Sony Xperia XA2 Ultra, the big one, the big blocky Sony Xperia. So that'll be up on Pocket Now. It'll be just sort of a standard phone review that we'll be putting up there. I'm debating whether or not I want to revisit phones. So my V30 in this Super Armor case, my V30 just got its Oreo update, and it did change quite a bit of the camera functionality. The experience is smoother than any other V series phone that I've used in a while, like V20. Excuse me. Performance is tremendously improved. Just speed, snappiness, responsiveness, things like that. The photography hasn't changed substantially, but the auto mode has been cleaned up a little bit. The auto mode is a little bit better. So I'm debating, do I want to spend time detailing some of that stuff, or would it be better to try and get my hands on phones earlier, do reviews on that stuff, but then you never really get the long-term view? And I only really want to be spending time with about a phone a month. Maybe 12 different phones over the course of the year, because I feel like, especially being the solo producer that I am and working on a couple projects where I'm hoping to do some work with a recording company coming up soon. I can't talk about it yet, but just doing some cool hosting stuff for another channel, you know, not necessarily on my own channel, but, you know, talking about microphones and high-end audio capture and how to improve your you know, home spoken word or voiceover recordings versus, you know, what mics you might want to use out in the field if you're trying to do some vlogging. I really, really want to try and spread some of that stuff out, and I'm more interested in the education side of this than trying to scramble and fight for that breaking news feeling on a review. Like, I don't really know what value or what benefit that provides anymore. It's kind of tough. You know, a major outlet can go and review a phone because they'll have early access, or they'll get a pre-brief and they'll get a hands-on video out the same day that the phone's announced. And I'm not going to be able to compete with that. So why should I try and do something like that poorly when I can spend some more time digging into the things that I find really interesting? That, and also how many of these phones I might need to buy. I don't want to buy 12 phones on my own dime. You know, the Patreon's bringing in a little extra cash. The Patreon's not doing that well that I can afford to buy these phones. And it's, you know, I would love to see that take off, because what I really want to do is not have the crazy huge bookcase full of old phones. What I'd love to do is be self-funded, where the phone reviews and the Patreon can pay for every new phone that I buy and then give them away to whoever's subscribed to the channel. That would be ideal, but we're ways off from doing that kind of that kind of review giveaway synergy. So we'll see. I'm getting a lot of questions about the Huawei P20 Pro. That is one that I'm going to be working to try and get my hands on. I've sent out some feelers to Huawei PR if I can just spend some time with the loaner unit. Again, I don't want to spend €899 trying to get one of these things in-house right now while I'm still wrapping up some other gadget reviews and some other tech tutorials. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm very interested in the state of that Huawei camera. Moving up to a larger image sensor is one of the most exciting things I think we've seen in mobile photography since the Lumia 1020, which I was also getting some questions about if a Nokia 10 could compete. I don't believe Nokia can compete this year. I think they're still rebuilding. I think they're still in a very sensitive position, that they're trying to play the consumerism game, which is the right place for them to be right now. Build up the brand, get loyal consumers again, and then from there, try and make a pivot where you can afford some experiments, where you can afford some missteps. I don't think they're in that position right now, and I think HMD would be working too hard. So when we hear about Pentalens, and it starts to sound like we're marketing men's razors instead of selling cameras, yeah, I think that's actually the right play for them. They can do something interesting there. Maybe they have an ultra-wide, a zoom, a dual sensor, and an RGB. Or a black and white, a monochrome, not an RGB. But you put that together, and then you can use software processing to combine the images from all those different things in a sort of a light L16 or a Litro, you know, depth scanning kind of way. And that could be really interesting. I don't think that'll be as fundamental to the core improvement of photography as just putting in a larger image sensor. So we'll see how that goes. From Ganzi Tech Nerd, but with tech becoming obsolete faster than ever, do you think long-term reviews really help YouTube viewers? I don't. I don't think the people seeking out these videos are looking to be educated. That's not really the point of these reviews anymore, and I think the traffic and the search bear out, you know, what channels are struggling. You know, the channels that are doing really well either have some kind of hook, like Jerry Rig Everything, where it's just gadget destruction porn, but done in a very consistent way, so it feels like a testing methodology and a protocol, and those videos are super entertaining. But most of these videos are kind of hinged on us having conversations with people that are regular viewers, and then people searching out interesting content that seems to resonate with a particular fan base. I think I'm more valuable in the education space, and I think so much more of our, you know, YouTubery these days is personality driven. So I can try and scramble to do these, you know, back to back phone reviews. But that's not the conversation that I really want to have. I want to know what it's like to actually live with this gadget for a while. I want to know what it's like to dig into some of the minutia of that gadget for a while. And I know that there's a minority, a smaller chunk of the audience that wants to that wants to participate with a similar kind of conversation. And those are the kinds of conversations that I do better at. I'm not the rat race hustle. I'm going to pound PR until they give me what I want and try and make that play that way. So I'm not really doing my best work. And if I'm not doing my best work, why would you guys want to watch that? So that and also I part of the reason why I want to join the conversation with longer term use is I'm tired of tech feeling as disposable as it is. I want to see us start having more grown-up conversations about holding on to these gadgets longer and how we can hold on to these gadgets longer and how we can pressure companies to do a better job of supporting our gadgets longer. And I don't feel like the right reply is always like, well, let's get into another class action suit against Samsung. I mean, that's one tool of our arsenal. Another tool would be, what companies do we pay for? What companies do we support? Can we revive, the mod and ROMing community? Can we offer up better support on certain gadgets for our family and friends? Can we be the knife's edge of leading that kind of discussion? If we can reclaim some of the geekery of this as we're making that transition from the smartphone as fashion statement to the smartphone as commodity to whatever comes after the smartphone, I think we'll be in a better position for the future. Free to run. Hey, JB from Nate. What's up, Nate? From Sherrill, Huawei phones have always been about photos thanks to Leica. Again, I think Huawei is the spiritual successor to Nokia and Zeiss. Until Nokia can afford to take some risks again, I think Huawei is where it's at. Jerry from Sherrill, jerry rig everything destroys everything in the most methodical way. They do. It's just the practicality of taking one unit and calling this like a testing protocol. It's gadget destruction porn. It's really entertaining, consistent gadget destruction porn. You get a good look on what's on the inside of your phone, but it's the same problem I have with drop tests. If you really wanted to conduct an accurate drop test, you would need about 100 samples of a very specific phone to replicate very specific types of drops and impacts. Dropping one phone over and over and over and over again, not that Zach does that on his channel, but every time you see a drop test, that's not a test. That's just, we wanted to break a gadget and it's salacious to watch us smash it. Let's see. From Suresh, it's so sad to see every phone is the same nowadays. From Ganzi Tech Nerd, well said, Juan. I absolutely am hooked on your personal channel because it is more educational. And from Social Jetlag, what should I do with a broken screen and what happened to the review unit V30 which had a broken screen? Well, it depends. Social, it depends on what phone you have, but try and get it repaired if you can. The V30 that did have the broken screen, that was a prototype unit. So that was pre-release hardware, pre-release software. So that got sent back to LG. Let's see. And then Renato Laporte. It's like most reviewers commenting on the Huawei claim of 18 months no slowdown experience. Phone has been off for 6 months. Reviewer turns the phone on and says, yeah, it's still fast. Yeah, so stuff like that really bugs the crap out of me, and it was also one of the reasons why I felt I wasn't the right fit for Pocket Now. I mean, if you look at my After the Buzz videos, unless it's a phone that I've really been using, I'm not good at that. I'm not good at coming back to a phone after it's been off in a drawer for 6 months and then turning it on for a week and going, oh, wow, look at how much improved this phone experience is. Whereas my Mate 10 Pro, I have used every day since I got it. And same thing. The only thing that turned off my Mate 9 was getting a Mate 10. So I feel very well prepared to talk about the experience of using a Mate 10 Pro as a daily driver. Now, most of that commentary would be focused on camera tech and gaming because it has become my favorite gaming platform. For my continuing but waning Marvel Future Fight addiction. But it's a frustrating state. You know, like I've got a couple other phones. I'm not going to be able to intelligently talk about what the long-term experience of using a OnePlus is. It's a fine phone. I can tell you exactly who I think should be looking at OnePlus as a company, but that's not a phone for me, so I don't typically find myself really utilizing it all that much. Demir Frank, you're better off without Pocket Now. I mean, I thank you for that sentiment, but I also think Pocket Now is better off without me. I'm not the right fit for their audience. Social jet lag, do you game on your PC or do you have a Mac? I don't currently run any OS 10 gear. I used to keep a Mac Pro around, but they've not been keeping up with pro hardware to the degree that I would like. So right now, I've got a Linux server, I've got a NAS, I've got 2 Windows desktops, and between my wife and I, we have 3 Windows laptops right now. And I really want to scrub one of those Windows laptops and get a newer, some fresh build of Linux on there just to see what's going on. And yes, that is, ladies and gentlemen, that is the real Damir Frank. Come on, guys. No, like he's a big deal, but I'd be kicking off anyone who is impersonating Damir. That's just not cool. We don't mess with that. So I want to get into the headlines. I kind of spent a little bit more time playing up the housekeeping. Yeah, but check out that TARDIS teaser. I'm gonna play with some more VR stuff, and I want if there's suggestions that you all have out there for how to share VR experiences, I would love to hear them, because right now VR is so interesting to consume, but it's so terrible as a social experience. Like, you always have to come up with more of a gimmick or something to get the experience across, and I don't know what I don't know what translates that well for people. But I'm going to be getting I think I'm going to go with the Acer. I'm probably going to use the Acer mixed reality headset, and we'll see how that goes. Lil Sweet Lynn, Juan, you're one of the few that focus on smartphone audio, which a lot of us value. You have a lot to offer. Well, I appreciate that. Again, if we can keep the discussion shared and we can keep people talking about that kind of stuff amongst those who are interested in it, then hopefully we can revive and do some more of those audio and camera reviews more regularly. Right now, it's just, I don't want to have to do 6 phones a month just to keep up with whatever release schedule might be out there. I'm really looking to spend more time and to have a higher quality discussion with you guys. And from Chris Moran, hey, Juan, at work in NYC, watching you, NYC represent, East Coast, how's it going? All right, let's get into some of these stories. I'm going to go back into a screen share here real quick. So, the iPhone protected you from Facebook call scraping, Android not so much. iMore kind of sensationalizing headlines in some of these topics, but they were one of the first that I saw being shared on Reddit talking about this story, where the differences between iOS and Android kind of allowed Facebook to get away with some more shenanigans than I think users would have appreciated. Immediately, I want to open up with a question for you guys, especially those of you in the live chat. You're watching this later. You're listening to the podcast version of this. By the way, the podcast version of this show has been revived. You can subscribe to the SGGQA podcast on your favorite podcast catching service. Where do you see a corporation's responsibility to consumers in an age of selling off personal information? There's a part of me where I find this kind of practice where Facebook's app is on a lot of phones is uninstallable. Like, you get a Galaxy, and depending on the different carrier brandings and depending on whether it's unlocked or not, you might not be able to uninstall Facebook from your Galaxy. Fill in the blank, any other phone, likely a similar situation. The best you can do is go into your apps and disable Facebook. And I'm paranoid enough that I still don't believe that it's completely deactivated, that some rogue code from Facebook is hacking my mainframe. Suresh, along with BGR. So Suresh, iMore and BGR, whether or not they're credible, this is a story that broke early from iMore, and they're not wrong. I mean, we've seen this sort of corroborated from several other outlets. Though I agree with the sentiment as to what those sites' particular bias might be and how they report topics and how they cover gadgets and electronics. So, and from Renato Laporte, iPhone doesn't allow apps to read 2FA codes and forces me to type them by hand, switching between apps because dual window isn't a thing on iPhone. That's an interesting perspective. I actually hadn't thought about the multitasking argument from that perspective as to whether or not the phone was handling two-factor like that. Okay, but regardless, I want to get back to the main question for you guys. What is a corporation's responsibility? this is scummy behavior. We don't like this idea of corporations profiting off of trafficking in user data. We're starting to see better education from consumers as to what your personal value might be worth and how you should engage with any kind of monetization scheme or tactic. But guys like Mark Zuckerberg, when he goes out there and says, "Hey, it's in the terms of service. We told you what we were going to do with your data." Is that good enough? And especially in light of Cambridge Analytica, where that's not really in the terms of service, but Facebook is still fairly well protected from a legal sense, or at least from an FTC or regulatory sense, that another bad actor utilizing that platform has extreme access into your personal behavior, your personal data, and whether or not they're targeting you specifically, that collection of data from thousands or millions of users is extremely valuable for predicting trends and predicting outcomes. So you want to monkey with a country's elections, you can do that fairly effectively thanks to the amount of data you can scrape out of Facebook. And Facebook is aiding in that by sort of scraping data out of our phones. So it's not just browser. It's just not browser behavior, which I don't think is applicable in this modern smartphone age. So I'll be curious to hear your thoughts, and I'll be curious to see. I'll try and come back to this at the end of the show, just to see what you all have to say as to what the limits should be, what the thresholds should be. When should a government get involved? When should law enforcement get involved? Do we trust law enforcement to get involved when they're likely trying to do very similar things to weed out criminal behavior? Again, leveraging a platform for personal information is sort of a universal across criminals and law enforcement because they're all attacking the same people. So I'll be curious to see what you all think. At the same time, we also had this tweet from Edward Snowden, which was just kind of funny given what's going on. I'll put a link to this in the show notes. This is an old interview from 2009. So a reporter asking, is their information, they own it, and someone from the BBC, and so you won't sell it, and Facebook saying, no, of course not. And how quickly that has changed in light of like Facebook's current behavior. He also has another tweet from an interview that Zuckerberg did with the New York Times a year later, saying the age of privacy is over. And that just leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth. It's just kind of an unfortunate juxtaposition of why Zuckerberg actually probably would be an effective politician. Campaign trail Zuckerberg, no, we're not going to sell your data. Elected Zuckerberg, oh, privacy's dead. So yeah, that's why I labeled creepy for Facebook and Sinclair Media. Sinclair is what we're going to be talking about next. It's just really unfortunate, and I think the next phase of data and services has to be built on some kind of upfront monetization. The idea that you build a service, you put it out for free, you get a glut of users, you make it cool in some way, and then you try and shoehorn in some kind of monetization, I don't think is sustainable anymore. I think that actually works against a lot of trends that we're seeing, especially from younger people who aren't utilizing stuff like Facebook to the same degree. Sure, they might be doing a bunch of stuff on Instagram still, but that's also sort of in light of how poorly Snapchat has performed over the same period of time. And this still feels like it's wide open for any kind of disruption point for that kind of shenanigan. Let me scroll down here. Oh, and I got a super chat on YouTube from Nicholas Blackmore. Is the difference in camera quality worth upgrading from Mate 10 Pro to the P20 Pro? So, ultimately, we don't know yet. We need to spend more time with it. I feel that the initial conversation that was started from DxO is an interesting read. So if you go and you read their review of the Mate 10 Pro and you read their review of the P20 Pro and you look at those scores, you'll get a sense of what works, what doesn't, what they valued, what they didn't. I don't feel they weight lifestyle usage as much as they should, but I do feel that they're internally consistent, especially since they've revamped their scoring, and that's why we're seeing all of these scores over 100. Because after that change, I feel that they've been a little bit more consistent in what they're testing. I just don't always feel that what they value in testing is reflective of the overall ergonomic and consumer experience of trying to capture good photos and trying to capture good video. And I think they also still kind of ignore some things that bug me, like the way lens flaring from an aesthetic viewpoint might look really good on one phone and then look absolutely terrible on another phone. Like Samsung was guilty of that with their first generation of really wide aperture cameras. Getting into f1.8 territory, you would see these really like warpy, bendy lens flares, which I don't think looked that great. But then you compare that against the first generation Pixel, where you had ring flare, vertical and horizontal lens flare, you had flash flare, you had every kind of glass defect you could, and DxO still rated it as their top camera of the year. So that was obviously wrong. The one thing I'll be really interested in is whether or not they capture some of the same spirit of the Lumia 1020. So if you care about the best photographic photos or cinematic video from your phone, then the larger image sensor will probably be the one you want. So we'll have to see. Unfortunately, I can't answer that beyond that, but I feel like if your big thing is like, I want great bokeh and I really want that creamier fall off of focus, depth of field blur, then the P20 Pro will probably be the right fit for you. From Chris Moran, I have the Pixel XL. I'm looking to the Mate 10 Pro. Is it a good upgrade? And then someone else is answering, wait for the Mate 20. If you can still hold out with the Pixel for a little bit longer, I'm a big fan of driving your phone purchases into the ground. And the Pixel XL is still a plenty capable performer. I just have issues with lens quality, and I feel that there are a number of lens defects on that phone. If it's working for you right now, trying to throw some money at like a 1 year to a 1.5 year upgrade might not feel substantial. Some really interesting things, though, especially looking at the AI processing. There is some merit there. I don't know that it's been fully utilized to its best possible outcome for improving photos, but it's so much better than the old days. If you remember, like, back in the early days of Samsung, like Galaxy Note 2 era, you'd open up a Samsung camera app and you would have like fireworks mode, hot dog food mode, non-hot dog food mode, little kitten mode, puppy mode, as if these were different kinds of photos. But the phone was trying to prime for a specific kind of photography, and you would tell it, well, I want to take pictures of fireworks. So you point the phone up at the sky and it's going to do something to the shutter speed and the ISO to try and better capture fireworks, and it never worked. So now with this on-device AI processing, and something that LG actually is doing fairly well too, in scanning the scene in real time to try and change the auto mode to better fit the conditions that you're shooting in, that kind of stuff could be really interesting. Google, I would never count Google out for that kind of software processing and software recognition, how it recognizes an object, cuts that object from the foreground into the background. That kind of post-processing is intense on a Pixel 2. If you can hold out, I think going from a Pixel to a Pixel 3 or a Mate 20, whatever it's going to be called, would feel like a nice upgrade. I think if you jump on a 1 year to an 18-month upgrade now, it's going to feel good, but it's not going to feel as nearly as significant as at least getting to that 2-year cycle out. So, and from Joel J, ugh, the bloat of touch wheeze. From Renato Laporte, Huawei need to get their video game together. No 60 frames per second and no AIS on 4K is bad. I agree. 60 frames per second would be nice, but especially with the processing power that Kirin is capable of, I want 60 frames per second 4K. I want 400 frame per second 1080p. You know, like, we could get to that point. Excuse me, I'm a little congested. But then also I also kind of like that it's HEVC. So yeah, I'm balancing smaller file sizes at a higher overall quality with more features that could be really interesting. And so I've shot a lot of video on Huawei phones. It's just not as nice as when I know I'm going to be shooting video from like my LG V30. So we'll see. I do want to get into the Sinclair story. This is something that if you already weren't afraid of media being co-opted, of regulatory capture, the recent stories of Ajit Pai, chairman of the FCC, facing lawsuits over preferential treatment of certain media outlets, wrecking decades-old laws about media consolidation, and if you're a conservative and you care about actual competition in any given marketplace, this is a story that should be very concerning. So, Sinclair put out so Sinclair is a media corporation which owns a ton of smaller media entities. And it used to feel like Sinclair was mostly interested in, say, like local Fox affiliates, but they've recently been picking up ABC affiliates, CBS affiliates. I think they have a couple NBC affiliates. So when you talk about trust in news, a lot of consumers are still going to trust those local anchors who are, local to that community, that live in that community, over like, an NBC Nightly News with, I don't even know who's hosting the NBC Nightly News anymore. I just don't trust television or cable news at all anymore. So Sinclair has been buying up all these tiny little stations. Recent deregulation from our current FCC has made it even easier for them to acquire and buy up numerous media outlets. And so Sinclair can give these stations marching orders. They can send out a message and say, this is a must report on story. And not only can they say you must report on the story, they can say, here is the script for the story you're going to report on. So recently, all these little local news affiliates started putting out a message talking about how dangerous, a narrative is in news, and how bias and poorly researched stories is coloring news reporting. And we're going to work very hard to continue keeping your trust and providing a benefit to your community. I'm not even doing the script justice here, but someone started taking video cuts of all of these different stations, and when you hear 20 different local news stations, local news anchors repeating the same script, it's one of the most chilling things I've ever heard. Wherever you fall on the political spectrum, I think there's a valid good faith reason to be afraid of this type of media ownership. So if I go into screen share, I'm not going to play the audio because I don't want any kind of potential copyright strike, but I'll leave a link to this video. Excuse me. So it starts out pretty innocuous. You've got one or two. Look, it's a Fox and an ABC station, a CBS station, and it just keeps building through more and more talking heads. And the first time I saw this video, I wasn't really paying attention. So a few of the cuts, when they would go from one station to another, the script flowed so naturally that I didn't realize that they had cut to another station. I thought, oh, you just went from a male anchor to a female anchor. Well, this is really flipping creepy as you get into like this shot right here, where it's just station after station after station. And you can't say it's Fox. It's not just Rupert Murdoch anymore. Sinclair has found a way of capturing part of the narrative regardless of station in any market that they can do business in. So you see that on that grid, it's like 30 stations on the screen all at the same time repeating the exact same script in the most sort of Orwellian way possible. That's not a good look for a democracy. That's not a good look for spread of information. And this is, again, why I think it's so valuable that people like us are leading the conversation on things like technology topics. We need to be resources for our family and friends. We need to suffer through all of the terrible questions that we get, all of the bad tech support questions that we get, because we really want the people we care about to turn to us when a bad story comes, when a net neutrality issue comes up, and we're going to have a grown-up debate on it, not a totally hijacked news debate from Sinclair Media. So even if you're against net neutrality, you should be the one leading the discussion among your family and friends, not leaving it up to mega corporate interests. I don't care how libertarian you are. Corporate authoritarianism is just as bad as liberal authoritarianism. That's not good. So it's something that I hope we can join the topic on together. I'll leave that link too, but it's really easy to find. Sinclair script for local news stations. You know, you can spread that on your own messaging, on your own platforms, on your own social media. Like, I showed it to my mom, and she was like, "Well, I've got to tell everyone on Facebook about this. This is terrible." Like, it wasn't even like I had to like push that conversation. But again, my mom, studied to be a computer programmer and used to work for Ma and Pa Bell, so she remembers the days of divestiture where we had to break up AT&T because they had such scummy business practices back at a time when a lot of the country still had to rent their phone from AT&T and were paying exorbitant prices for the privilege of having a phone in their homes. So that kind of thing is a tough conversation to have in this current narrative where people are tribal. We don't want to join a conversation which might challenge our preconceived notions over who the winner is or who the good guy is, who the bad guy is. We all sort of bear some responsibility in unraveling this and making the situation better. And also, the generation coming after us are going to be way savvier at dealing with these kind of things, but we don't want to leave them the worst possible mess we can. We want to try and make this a little bit better than how we found it. I do have a super chat here from Taki A. I'd like to watch a video like how low impedance inner ear monitors work with smartphones like the V30 or other phones that have a better DAC inside. Sorry for the English. I'm from Japan. You being from Japan, you're communicating with me way better than I would ever be able to communicate with you. Especially as much as I can extend my love of Kurosawa films, I don't know that would be sufficient. I'd definitely be interested in having a sort of an expanded conversation on technology and audio. One of the things that I would say right off the bat, if you don't mind the shameless plug, if I go back into screen share, I actually have this lined up because I was going to talk about this at the end of the show. But the reason why I didn't do a live broadcast last week, so last Monday, I didn't do a Monday morning tech chat. I drove down to UCLA to speak with Dr. Allison Grimes, and Dr. Grimes is the director of the audiology department at UCLA. She also works in infant development. She has a focus on pediatrics. And I wanted to talk to her about what trends we've seen over the last 10 years or so in regards to hearing loss. And if you're paying attention, the last 10 years or so saw the rise of the consumer-focused smartphone. And so she was an amazing woman to interview. Totally on point. She actually read the interview questions that I sent to her beforehand, so she was eminently prepared for this conversation, even though some of it really isn't her focus in terms of medicine. And she was willing to share some of her ideas and some of her hypotheses. It's a big difference when you talk to someone like me and I have a guess as to what I feel is contributing to hearing loss, because we have seen a marked rise in teenage and young adult hearing loss in this country. Again, the same window over the last 10 years. She's super upfront about saying, correlation does not equal causation, but there are some trends that we can examine in terms of consumer behavior. So the full interview is available on this podcast feed. So if you go to iTunes or you go to Google Play and you look up the SomeGadgetGuy podcast or the SGGQA podcast, the current top episode is Dr. Allison Grimes talking about hearing loss. And I ask her point blank about things like inner aural earbuds, things that actually seal the ear canal versus Apple EarPods and AirPod headphone design, and she shares some pretty candid thoughts as to what she feels is contributing to this kind of hearing loss. So please go check that out, and then maybe over the next week or so I can also come back and revisit smartphones with super high-end DACs. I'm also going to be doing a little work with Mr. Mobile coming up, and he was kind enough to send over this Echo Box. So I'm going to be putting an Echo Box up against my Fio, because I still really like my Fio 3rd generation X5, and then how that compares to something like a smartphone. Obviously, the V30 is the most readily capable smartphone to compete against a dedicated music player. But, the V30 didn't sell that well, so, if we're putting this up against any other phones, like an iPhone, what the differences might be for quality, for file support, what kinds of music files you want to listen to. and just putting all of that together in a way that's kind of entertaining. I will be doing sort of a quick cut of the Dr. Grimes interview for my YouTube channel, but I don't think I'm going to put the full interview up there. It's about a 40-minute conversation with one of the top audiologists in the country. So while that's a cool video, I don't know that it's worth putting up a 4K 40-minute video with that kind of discussion, when this is something that's actually easier to just sit and listen to on a good pair of earbuds. Don't use a crappy pair of earbuds. Use a good pair of headphones. Let me scroll down through this because we have a couple other things, and I want to wrap this up here in about 10 minutes, unfortunately. I still have family in town, and we did the whole Easter thing. Quick tangent. We took Lex to the zoo, and she just went literally like little girl manic crazy to see the Easter bunny. So while you see all these little kids who are super nervous, because it's creepy, it's a guy in a giant bunny mask, super nervous to go up to meet the Easter bunny, she just like dove headfirst into this dude's crotch to give the Easter bunny a big hug, and I kind of felt bad. But it's like, I like that my daughter lives out loud, so that's really exciting. From Ganzi Tech Nerd, my tweet suggesting the Echo Box review from you came true. It did. Mr. Mobile has been a really fun partner to work with. We're actually going to be taking a look at another piece of recording technology. I'll just go hold that up here real quick. I'm going to be guesting on one of his reviews just to talk about some of the differences in microphone technique and recording tech. So be on the lookout for that probably in another week or so. So, last thing that I wanna cover, we covered Sinclair. Oh, April Fool's jokes. I don't know. Did you guys feel this was a really lame year for April Fools? I kind of felt this was a really lame year for April Fools. We had a lot of issues internally at Newegg. We wanted to put together like a fun, offbeat video, not just like put out a press release on a new product that you could buy that didn't really exist. So we came up with this concept of making fun of us not being able to do an ASMR video. And, it's like super silly, like in the middle of trying to be all whispery and hushy, two Newegg ninjas are like drilling pieces of wood in our studio for no good reason. And it's just something we had a lot of fun with. Maybe what actually kind of did it for me, though, were the number of people. Oh, I probably shouldn't screen share this because I'm going to be talking about their comments specifically. No, turn it off. Okay, there we go. You saw all the comments I was going to talk about. Were the number of people who started taking it seriously. So we had a big problem at Newegg because Newegg is a pretty corporate industry. It's tech resale. They're trying to fight Amazon on a bunch of fronts. So April 1st was both April Fool's Day and Easter. So we were trying to be respectful of the holiday, and we put out our April Fool's video early. Like, I don't know that anyone had really landed on April 1st in the world when we did put out our video. And I just have a hard time with people who are so ultra hyper literal on YouTube, leaving comments where you can see the obvious whoosh as like the joke not only like sort of flies over their head, but like launches into orbit in the space above their head. So it was pretty tricky. Like, for example, we got this one from a gentleman who I'm not going to name, but how is this marketing attempt a textbook fail? Let me count the ways. 1, it presumes that the acronym ASMR is so widely understood that no explanation of what it means is needed. The ASMR concept is very niche, and moving it from niche to the widespread requires educating the reader at the beginning of the story. Lack of educational value equals fail for Newegg. 2, when the hosts open with whispering, it's presumed that the now viewer, transitioned from reader, got it, understanding the significance of that technique. I discovered the value of videos with, as just one example from thousands of titles, hypnosis sleep music with delta waves in my own life. However, it has taken a concentrated focused educational effort to reach even the most faint view of got it. This video's void in communicating any of this to the viewer ranks the video as a fail. 3, what is the significance of the background sounds vis-a-vis the point of the video? No viewer knowledge creates another fail. 4, what does Newegg selling goods have to do with the value of listening to these videos? Newegg's marketing VP needs to tune into everybody's favorite radio station. YFM, what's in it for me? That was not the only comment. There were a bunch. Like, left out the ASMR community. Well, you also left out the murderous hentai community. You're going to make a video for all of them? My point is how useless this is and not needed at all. Someone else, like, I hate ASMR. That's why I hit the dislike button. And again, the whole point of the video is that we're failing at doing an ASMR video. So I liked our video. I thought it was fun. It was fun to put together. But this was just a terrible year for any kind of April Fool's shenanigans or hijinkery. So it was kind of a bummer. From Renato Laporte, Newegg should go the D brand way of PR, and you can tell people to F off. That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, it's one of those things where, as a content producer, you're going to get some pushback on April Fools. So many people are so over it. They're so over it that they have to leave comments on your video about how over it they totally are. But it's like, man, it's like we're never allowed to have any fun. I was going to do an April Fool's video on my personal channel saying how I was going to create notch vision. Let me put that right there. So all of my videos were now going to have a notch off the side of the video, just to piss off Demir Frank, because he got really upset when we did that as a joke during the Pocket Now podcast. And I was going to really earnestly the market's spoken. Apple's done this. Obviously, Apple is an amazing company for that consumer experience and really polishing up new technologies, and all the other companies that are coming out to also embrace cutting into the display. And I realized, I can help in that discussion, and I can create content. And, even if you don't have a notch, you don't have to feel like you're left out. And then a notch was just going to pop in from the side of the screen, cutting off part of the display. I was going to do that. But then, I also started seeing early just what people were talking about for April Fools this year, and I just don't want the grief. I'm tired of trying to have fun like that and having people like, oh, it's so stupid. Why would you even do that? Or the people that just take it outright literally seriously. Like, I'm subscribing from your channel because you're taking your channel in terrible directions. And why? DIY. Why? I'm just not gonna. So, it's kind of a bummer, but it's how we live, we learn, we grow. But yeah, I didn't see any other big April Fool's jokes that I thought really landed. And I was celebrating Easter with my family and my daughter and my folks. So that was kind of the deal. Folks, I got to wrap this up because we're going to go grab one last brunch. Just as Andrew Wallace, my co-host for the Geek Book Club, shows up. You had a meeting. Andrew, you're supposed to always live exactly by my unannounced podcasting schedule. Come on, son. From Sherrill, this year, fun has become corporate and people want to have status quo rather than something new. That I'm going to save for another podcast discussion because I think you're right on point there. A lot of people don't seem to want anything fresh that feels too disruptive. It broke new ground. Instead, it's like I think we're all seeking comfort food, comfort films, nostalgia, everything that's going to make us feel okay about what's going on in the world right now. And Andrew seeing Ready Player One tonight. Excellent. Awesome. Yeah, we'll be talking about the film adaptation on the Geek Book Club soon. Oh, Mary P, what's up? Mary P also joining us on a lot of these live chats too. So, everybody, I want to thank you all for tuning in this week. I'm going to shameless plug again. If you want to engage with more educational materials, more nuanced tech topics and conversations, I'm going to ask for a little help in sharing my most recent podcast. Sitting down with someone of such high esteem in the medical community to have a conversation about smartphones and hearing health was kind of a big coup for me. So if again, you can help me spread the word on that interview with Dr. Allison Grimes, audiologist, UCLA. This is also a conversation that we really need to start having with kids coming up. how to protect your hearing, how to not damage your hearing, best practices on listening to your favorite content, your favorite media. And she has some wonderful points to engage the conversation, and then also how people might want to seek help. We're a generation, my age and younger, are generations of people that will probably need more assistance earlier in life because of bad habits that we had when we were younger. We need to get rid of the stigma around hearing aids. Like, it's no big deal that people walk around with glasses to correct their vision, but hearing aids are looked at like some kind of freakish adaptation of medical science. So that's totally available now. Like I said, Google Plus podcasting, Stitcher, a couple other places, iTunes podcasts. And then also you can go to SomeGadgetGuy.com, and it's still one of the newest posts on my personal blog. And again, if you can help spread that around your family and friends, share that with people who you care about, that you don't want them to be deaf in their 30s, I would greatly appreciate it. Folks, thanks so much for tuning in to the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show. Thank you so much for the folks who left me some super chats just to focus some of that conversation in. I'm going to have a bunch of stuff coming out this week, another Newegg Now, another Pocket Now podcast to end of the week, some individual videos coming up, and some fun editorials that I'm going to hopefully drive some discussion on other tech lifestyle, tech health, and tech politics as this channel continues to expand its global reach and domination now that my face no longer looks like a topographical map of Mordor. You know where you can find me around the internet, Some Gadget Guy on the Twitters, the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the Google Pluses, I guess, if that's still a thing. It probably is. And I will catch you all on the next live stream. Thanks for watching.